Hello, Contrarians listeners. Back again with something a little different, something kind of new, but a supplement, if you will, an addition, a bonus feature for the final film in our summer journey of B2B bedroom to box office. As we are discussing The Other Side of the Wind, the long lost Orson Welles film that made its way to the theaters and Netflix back in 2018. The story of this movie is a fascinating one, in the episode proper. I'm sure Julio will delve into all that, but something notable is the cinematographer in this film, gentleman by the name of Gary Graver, who worked alongside Orson Welles and definitely has an interesting tie into this movie and its history. But it turns out that I have a friend who is related to Gary Graver. We're joined today by my buddy Adam. Adam, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you guys doing?
Excellent. Happy to have you here, Julio. I know you've brushed shoulders with Adam in the past, but I've been friends with Adam for about 10 years, and those who have ever come into contact with him know he's very mild mannered and um, sometimes will just say things nonchalantly that you're like, wait, what? And one of those things was several years ago, him regaling me with the tale of his uncle Gary Graver, who, as I mentioned, worked alongside Orson Welles, very instrumental in the story of The Other Side of the Wind, and also for the purposes of our summer adventure, worked behind the camera in the adult film industry for a duration of time, so much so that he is an AVN Hall of Famer, as is all of our other subjects this summer. But before we get to Adam here, Julio, I know that this is when I laid out this summer plan. This was like one of the first things I mentioned. It was like, yeah, and my buddy Adam is the nephew of the cinematographer on this, so we can bring him on.
And I just said, Adam from the wrestling parties?
Exactly. But you have seen Other Side of the Wind before, and you're somewhat familiar with the story of it thought to being lost to time. Is that about the extent of what you know, or do you know all like the ins and outs and the political drama surrounding it?
I do know the drama, the behind the scenes stuff more than the movie. Like I looked up on my letterbox. I was just telling Adam before we started recording that I remember watching the documentary because Netflix dropped the documentary and the movie, I think simultaneously, and the documentary made an impression on me because of just the convoluted story of the rights to the movie and Wells trying to get it done, and also his Peter Bogdanovich plays one of the characters in the movie, and but he's also, he had a history with Orson Welles, and the movie seems to deal a little bit with their relationship in real life, and it transposes it to this movie. And then apparently, according to Letterboxd, I watched the movie as well, but I don't remember that part. I remember watching the documentary and seeing the clips of the movie in the documentary. But reading my what I wrote on Letterboxd, I think it's because the movie's pretty trippy, and so we're gonna have a blast trying to work with Contrarians Corner and Real Talk. Like, there's to work our format on the movie because it's just so non-linear and so like weird from what I remember now that I've read my review. So I can't tell you specifics other than like Bogdanovich being in it, John Huston is in it, and then just the fact that Netflix kind of rescued the project,
Yeah,
like brought it out from limbo.
Yeah, it's an interesting tale through and through. But Adam, we appreciate you taking the time to be here. Adam, being the nice guy that he is, did reach out to Gary's eldest son, his cousin, just to kind of give him the heads up. So we're not fragmenting any family here, and we're not going to be telling any tales at recess with Adam, but just kind of anything he has to offer. This is definitely going to be a bit more conversational, not like our episodes. No real structure here. So, I guess first of all, Adam, you grew up around Los Angeles. Is that correct?
Yes, I was born in downtown Los Angeles, and I lived in North Hollywood until I was about 11.
So, having been to LA and, just the travels that I have had, it is a very film, movie forward city. And I can't even, can only imagine in the decades preceding that. Do you really have any memory of being, a kid and just the idea of where you lived was kind of surrounded with glitz and glamour in Hollywood, or is it not really something that registered with you that young?
It really was something that didn't register with me. Probably the biggest thing for me was I. So I did not see a lot of my uncle.
Hmm.
He worked so much on various film projects. If you look at his filmography through the 70s, he has a lot of years where he's doing 3, 4, 5, 6 movies a year. To where I barely saw him. I just knew he was in Hollywood. I remember it being kind of a bigger deal when I went to the first premiere of his, and it wasn't like a fancy red carpet premiere. It was just basically a showing of the film in front of about probably 60 people or so. When I was probably about 9, if I remember correctly. And I remember the big part of it was Maureen McCormick was in the movie coming right out of the Brady Bunch. So I'm like, okay, so my uncle must be a big deal if he's working with the stars like this.
um, and for my knowledge, is he your dad's older or younger brother?
Older brother.
Okay. So the question must be asked, Adam. What are some of your favorite movies, just overall? Not necessarily when you were a kid in Hollywood, but today, if someone asks you, your desert island list, what are those going to be?
Um, Me personally, I'm a big Mel Brooks fan. Probably two of my three favorite movies are Spaceballs and History of the World Part One.
That both with sequels, modern
Yes.
sequels.
But I really enjoy the Airplane series, so I'm very much of a satirical comedic fan is probably my movie tastes are very I guess I'd call them basic outside of satire. It's like I'm just looking to be entertained for 2 hours. And if I get things blowing up, that's kind of a happy accident for me. And as long as I don't have to remember a lot of characters and plot points, I'm usually going to be best off with the fewest things I have to remember going through a film.
He joins us, Julio. Adam was a fan of the Leslie Nielsen, or excuse me, the Liam Neeson. That's a Freudian slip there. The most recent Naked Gun. Adam enjoyed that as much as you and I both did, also.
Good. That's a sign of a good cinephile. But based on your description, though, I'm gonna say not a big Orson Welles fan, which is not. I'm not an Orson Welles
Mm.
fan. So,
So I can honestly say I've never seen an Orson Welles film. So I might have enjoyed them had I ever seen them.
I can
Um,
tell you wouldn't.
Probably not a bad assumption.
Yeah, it's a. I mean, Alex, I don't remember what your experience with Wells is, but definitely he is not like a crowd pleaser, and I think that maybe Citizen Kane, was probably the closest to him being like super mainstream and doing the kind of thing that most people would enjoy.
Hmm.
But definitely, there's not a whole lot of we'll just sit down and enjoy this.
It's what makes his cameo in the first Muppets movie so fucking funny.
Yes. There you go. That I would say if you're going to try to experience Wells for the first time, start with the Muppet movie, and let him get on your good graces that way because he's pretty funny, and then after that you can get into the really weird shit that he puts out. Well, that's cool. Naked Gun and Mel Brooks. I mean, we've yet to do a Mel Brooks movie, Alex.
We talk about him all the time, though.
At some point, I will lobby for Robin Hood, Men in Tights. I think.
One day.
One day.
So Adam, you mentioned the film premiere around the age of 9. So was that kind of when you became aware of what your uncle did for a living, or was it always kind of known within your family that, he makes movies, he makes the moving pictures, or was it kind of later in your childhood that you kind of figured out, oh, this is what my uncle does?
No, I'd known from an early age that he did films. A lot of what was described to me was he did not make big budget films, and they were these shoestring films. And a lot of listening to my dad complain about the menial parts of like my dad would be the guy who got shot, or my dad would be the waiter who had food spilled on him, or something like that.
I looked it up here. It looks like the movie in question with Maureen McCormick is Texas Lightning. Julio, we might have to add this to the future lineup. It's a
I like it.
Gary Graver exclusive, directed and written by.
So, as a sub point, at one point, Ron Howard was associated with that film.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, between the screening that we saw and the film actually being released, the studio asked him to completely rewrite the film. or completely re-edit the film and change it from the serious film to a slapstick comedy.
Those damn suits.
Yeah, one of the ones I always remembered from looking up your uncle initially, Adam, was he did do a movie with Ron Howard. He was a cinematographer on Grand Theft Auto with Ron Howard, which,
Yes.
yeah.
No relation to the game, I'm assuming.
Well, who knows? We'll get a film remake of that before we get Grand Theft Auto 6 released, Julio. But and that joke's old; it could vote at this point. Real quick, he mentioned Citizen Kane, which of course is always going to come up with Orson Welles. Adam, I don't know if you can confirm this. Part of the lore is that he couldn't afford to pay Gary for his work initially on the other side of the wind, so he gave him his Oscar that he got for Citizen Kane. Do you know if there's any truth to that?
That is 100% true.
Oh shit. That's tremendous.
I mean, you can't just drop that bomb, Adam, without a follow-up. Have you seen it? Did you see the Oscar?
I did not. So I don't know how long Gary had possession of it. But in a classic Hollywood story, he ended up selling it to a friend of his for, I believe, 6 figures, expressly telling the person, you cannot sell this because there will be a lawsuit that you will lose and you'll have to turn it over to someone. And so, of course, the person who bought it put it up for auction the next day, had a lawsuit filed, and ended up losing that money.
So, at the end of the lawsuit, did the Oscar go back to Welles?
And the Oscar went to?
If I remember correctly, I believe it went back to his estate because I believe Orson had passed away at that time, if I remember the story correctly.
Oh man, so he didn't get to see his Oscar again. He just gave it up.
That is funny, though, the cyclical nature of it. It just kind of ends back up in his estate anyway.
And then they turned around and sold it almost immediately after they got possession of it.
Everyone, the house always wins, brother. That's the name of the game. So the other side of the wind begins production in the early 70s, or right at the turn of the decade. The beginning of production was in August of 1970. There's obviously a long, convoluted road ahead for this movie, for the project, and we'll get to all that in detail in the actual episode for this. But Adam, come 2006, your uncle passes away. This is, nearly 40 years after the inception of this movie. And I know you almost tried to tell me the story, and I had to cut you off and be like, can you please save this for the recording? But you said there was the other side of the wind and the unfinished nature of the project did come up at his funeral. Is that correct?
Yes. So let me back up a tiny bit and just kind of do the very brief explanation of. So the brother of the Shah of Iran actually funded the film, but did not get to the finished product. And so it was the Shah's brother is the person who actually owned the footage. And the footage was sitting in a vault in France, I believe, for probably about 3.5 decades. So in 2006, at my uncle's funeral, we had about 15 speakers who spoke. And we had a surprise 16th speaker who just decided in between speakers to jump up and announce that he had a financing plan to get The Other Side of the Wind finished and released. And he was trying to find a prospective financier who'd be willing to take a look at his plan, as the best way to honor Gary was to get The Other Side of the Wind over the finish line and released.
That is a masterful move. Pretty shameless, but I guess that's
yeah,
how
I was about to say
Hollywood works.
Exactly, it's very Hollywood. And I imagine the response to that, Adam. The response from the peanut gallery in that situation. I imagine it was kind of icy, probably. Like, what the hell's this guy doing up here?
I will just leave it as I didn't see any hands going up of people trying to book lunches or dinners with this person to see if we can get this going.
He exits the funeral just handing out his cards. It's like, hey, call me. It's too soon.
Not related, but that he was probably not even the most embarrassing speaker at the memorial, so he did not even get that distinction.
Yeah, you mentioned the original negatives were again, this is just part of the lore. the original negative sat in a Paris vault, but there was allegedly a working print that Gary had. I don't know how much of that is true or whatnot, but when everything kind of went about when this movie finally got released, was there any consultation with your cousin or Gary's estate? Do you really know what went into motion to kind of get this across the finish line eventually?
So as best I can tell, my his estate was not involved at all because basically it was getting the Shah of Iran made whole was the big funding piece. If I remember correctly, because I know Gary had a portion of the film
Mm.
that he would take to film festivals around the world. And that was one of the ways that he supported himself in the 90s and early 2000s was by, and I believe it was about a 40-minute version, if I remember correctly,
Oh God, I
of the
love it.
film. And he would just be invited to film festivals literally all over the world.
And so he would take this like rough cut that he had and show that, and then I guess probably just do like a Q&A afterwards.
Exactly.
That's so funny because Wells is not in the movie. So that means that your uncle was just going around with, film that had like John Huston and Peter Bogdanovich, and other people and saying, hey, I swear to God, this was directed by Orson Welles. I guess people knew.
I
Yeah.
think it was also a lot of the Q&A part was really what the festivals were after because of how closely my uncle worked with Orson, probably to my uncle's overall detriment. I can remember stories of my uncle literally hiding from Orson. Of Orson would just have him be doing so much work that after a certain amount of time, my uncle would just disappear for like a week or so. And one time my dad was trusted with a phone number to be able to reach him, and my dad, not knowing any better, gave the phone number to Orson, who tracked him down and got him back to come in and do some more work. And but from what I understand, there were many situations like that where Gary would work with Orson for a while and then would have to take a break and step away and disappear somehow.
I mean, he was infamous, I guess, for having a big personality, Orson Welles, and just being very
Hmm.
difficult to work with. Uh, Obviously, he was very talented, but he would just going by, the lore, but also what I remember from that documentary, he would just bulldoze people around. So I can see how it would be exhausting to work with him. And man, I just love the fact that your uncle got to like take the 40 minutes on tour. 'Cause that's how he got the payback. It's like Wells didn't get to do it, but he at least got to benefit from having been through that experience. By the way, quick aside, because I had to find out, I got on the internet. I'm like, where is Orson Welles' Oscar right now? It doesn't give a name. It just says that it's in the hands of a private collector now after being purchased by another auction. So I didn't know any of this. I didn't know that Orson Welles had like given up his Oscar.
You know how baller that is? Just like how wild west of Hollywood. Well, I can't pay you, so here's this. Adam, I forgot to follow up when you said this. You said when your uncle sold it and said, "Hey, jackass, don't put this up for sale." Did he just turn around and like make like a public posting about like, "Hey, Oscar for sale"?
My understanding is it went to, at the time, what would have been one of the premier auction houses,
Jesus.
and it didn't take long for the lawyers to get involved and put a pretty quick end to that auction.
Um, Obviously, yeah, I mean, I know you personally, Adam. I know you're really close with your father, and I know your father was close with his brother, and just some of those stories you were telling. And from your understanding, do you think Gary really had a passion for making film, or do you think it was a career that he just kind of trailed upwards in, or do you think he really enjoyed the work he did in the industry?
He had a lifelong love of film. He actually moved to Hollywood. He was born in Portland, Oregon, and moved to Hollywood almost immediately after he graduated from high school, specifically to get into the movie industry. So this had always been a passion project of his and was something that he was incredibly passionate about, and the work he was doing, no matter how big or small the movie was.
Do your cousins have much of an affinity for the movies he made, or is it one of those things? We're fucking huge wrestling fans, and you hear like normal adjusted children will just be like, yeah, that's just my dad. I don't really know about that. Is it one of those things where they have an affinity for what he did, or is it more just that was our dad?
I think it was more that was our dad. A lot of the things my uncle did, there were a few bigger projects that he did, but almost everything, I'd say 95+% of the films he did are films that would just be B and C level movies at this point.
Mhm.
And so he was very much just one of the guys in Hollywood that was just turning out movies that didn't really go anywhere.
But with that in mind, then did was there some sort of like ripple effect when Netflix suddenly released probably one of the most notable movies that he worked in? I mean, I know that financially there wasn't any compensation or anything, but did your family suddenly like was talking about that at Thanksgiving or something? So hey, it's now everybody can watch it.
Not really. About as close as we got to that was my cousin was invited to a screening up in Portland, Oregon, at the movie theater that my uncle would go to with my dad every weekend to watch movies. And they did a screening of the film once it was finished.
That's pretty cool.
But that was kind of the extent of it.
I hope there was an Orson Welles popcorn tub, just a collectible. You just eat out of his brain.
It has to say something. Like when you open the head, it has to be like, "Excuse me, young man." Like it has to say like something very Wellesian. Um, Adam, on this one, I don't know if you really have any knowledge of this, but it doesn't say which of Gary's sons, but one of them is cited on the Wikipedia page for The Other Side of the Wind. The point being, there was further complications in 2007 through the intervention of Paul Hunt, who had worked on the film in the 70s as a line producer, as assistant editor, assistant camera operator, and gaffer, and was described as Gary Graver's son as, quote, the strangest, weirdest guy you'll ever meet. Do you have any idea who this Paul Hunt fella is?
I do not.
That sounds like the guy that spoke at the funeral.
I do know that my cousin was a main source for a biographer who printed one of, I believe, two or three biographies about Gary that are out in the wild. And so that entirely sounds like something that would have come from that, but that was not someone whose name came up for me.
Yeah, I have to start the hunt for Paul Hunt, Alex.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to figure more about this guy out. Maybe on the actual episode, we'll figure something out. I just thought it was funny that Adam's cousin was cited here. So, Adam, I understand this is a family member, so I'm not going to prod too deep into this, but it is your uncle did some famous work in the adult film industry. He used the pseudonym Robert McCallum. Now, this is not, Julio, we've talked about this. I can't remember when. This was not uncommon, specifically in the 70s, for just the way the film industry was, that union rules were a lot different. And if you needed some work and you were an accomplished, you were competent in your field, you could edit and shoot some porno and use a pseudonym like this. There was no social media, or the evidence could be quickly dissolved. Julio, I just want to get your reaction on this. One of the movies that Gary directed, it's the only pornographic film he used his shoot name for, and the reason he did was because Orson Welles edited it.
Is it called The Other Side of the Dong?
No, it's called 3 a.m. It had to be an influence on Matchbox 20's
Yes, that's what the
chart-topping hit. But he did work as a writer and director on over 135 adult films, including Unthinkable, which in 1985 won the AVN Award, I guess their equivalent of Best Picture for that year. And then, as I mentioned earlier, as with all of our subjects for our summer journey, he is in the AVN Hall of Fame. Adam, again, being sensitive to you and your family. I imagine this part of Gary's career isn't one that really ever came up. Was this one that, like I said, my understanding is it was close with your father, his brother. Was that something that was kind of common knowledge but not discussed, or was that something that kind of came out years later?
My dad never talked about the types of films that my uncle was working on, and I have a feeling it's probably because he knew and I was just left out of those discussions. One thing I did want to mention, though, in his work in the porn industry, after he passed away, my step aunt printed out all the emails that she received of condolences from people from all walks of Hollywood. And my cousin was very quick to point out that the most heartfelt and genuine were from the actresses who he did the adult films with, because Gary took his work with them so seriously. He treated them as a professional, just the same way as he would treat any other performer that he was working with.
That's
That's pretty
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd be like, yeah, they're much nicer than Orson Welles. I'm not hiding from them.
Pretty much.
It's he's like Burt Reynolds and Boogie Nights, you know. He's making a movie, god damn it, and this is what he's doing here. So, for full transparency, I did ask Adam in a personal conversation if he knew if Gary's AVN plaque or statue that was given to the Hall of Fame, if we know if it's where it is, and it sounds like we don't know exactly where that might be.
Private collector. It's just wanted some auction.
We got to track the yeah. It might go up
Dude,
for
please. Let's find out that it's the same collector that has Orson Welles' Oscar. They're like sitting side by side.
A match set.
Yeah. That is, I mean, yes, if you've watched Boogie Nights, I guess you can see that side of the porn industry, right? Like the guys that are actually, they have like a vision, and sure, PTA is probably embellishing some aspects of it or whatever, but it's not what most people think of as far as, what it entails, I guess, to make that type of movie. Like, when you make a porno, like, and I think that I'm sure there's plenty of instances where people just kind of like put a camera on a tripod and then go to town and then move the camera and do it again. But there's also, what you were just saying, Alex. There are times where like professionals just need the money, like people that actually make movies for a living, not amateurs, and this was like a source of income. But it's not something that you think of. Like you don't think of like, oh, the director of photography of an adult film.
Well, it's also just, I mean, we talked about this a little bit so far in our summer journey. It's so, the concept of that is so foreign now, and like it almost to younger people would seem insane that, like, because all porn now is shot on a fucking phone, but the idea that like someone who worked with fucking Orson Welles was like, hey, I need a check, I need to, so I'm gonna go shoot this and produce this as the best I can of my abilities. So yeah, it's crazy.
Hold on, the money shot, we have to do it with the magic hours hitting like in the background.
Bring out the lighting truss. Well, Julio, I remember when I originally told you about this, and like I said, you've met Adam before. He just kind of started divulging this to me in a way that I was like, what? So classic Adam in terms of just kind of not necessarily bearing the lead, but just some of the anecdotes you have, Adam, I think have a higher price tag than you sometimes shop them around at. That's just what I'll say.
In my mind, and please don't tell me otherwise and tell me differently, because I just want this version of the story in my mind. You guys are watching WrestleMania, and in between matches, Adam just name drops Orson Welles, and like, oh yeah, like he once gave my uncle his Oscar, and then the match starts, and you guys, like, everybody starts like talking, and then it goes away, and so you just like, that's in the back of your head through like, I don't know, Rock versus Cena or something, and then the match ends, and everybody starts talking about the match, and you go up to Adam, and it's like, wait, did you say that your uncle?
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened, Julio.
I don't honestly even remember how it came up.
I legitimately think it was when I was helping you move stuff around in your home. When you might have been getting ready to move, and I think I found something that was like a picture
of Orson Welles. Just
it
fell
was
out of one of the
something
boxes.
it was something that was kind of like, why do you have this? And I can't remember exactly what it was, but then of course Adam just starts diving into exposition, and I was like, holy shit. So this, honestly, Adam, this was really cool, because this is something I remember telling you about well over a year ago, but this is something that when this movie came out, and I knew the correlation, the relation that you had to it, when I eventually learned it, I was like, okay, we'll do this at some point in time on the podcast, and we'll do like a twofer. So I'm glad we got to do this. I guess in closing, from your perspective personally, with your uncle and just some of these stories you've told us and whatnot, did these things like necessarily repel you away from the idea of show business, or did you find kind of just these things as you learned them and they unfolded in front of you, were you always just kind of tickled by them, or did you ever find, some people kind of find the show business, like I say, I use the word repel, but I guess what just in general, at the end of the day, your personal reaction to kind of all these things you witnessed, were they amusing to you? Did you kind of find the industry gross? What was your personal reaction?
Um, it definitely did not repel me from working in acting at some point. I actually took an acting class in 8th grade, in part in case I needed to be an extra on one of Gary's projects. I'd have at least some sort of formal training and be ready to go. With my very, very periphery knowledge of the business, and of Hollywood in general, what really struck me, and especially at his memorial, was kind of a couple things. One, just kind of the oddities of some of the characters that you meet. Another story I've told Alex before is one of the speakers, his big story was talking about how he was in a hotel next to my uncle and at that time his wife. And the person went on for like 2 or 3 minutes of talking about what a great lover my uncle was and how he may have heard my uncle's second child being born. The only problem was the woman that was involved was not his widow, who was sitting in the front row.
Oh, jeez.
This feels like this is some sort of really bad sitcom.
Show business.
hmm the other thing that jumped out to me is how people outside of Hollywood react when they're around people that they see on television. Once again, at the memorial, my cousin's two daughters both recognized someone who I would not say is like an A-level celebrity, but is someone who would have been seen on TV a lot. And they were discussing amongst themselves whether they should go over and introduce themselves to this person at the memorial. And I'm just like, this might not be the right time for that.
I mean, I will not cast stones because who knows how I will react, Alex, if I'm ever at a memorial and I don't know, one
Aaron
of my idols.
Sorkin's there.
Aaron Sorkin shows up. I'll be like, I'll just go and give him a hug.
Why the fuck is Aaron Sorkin at Alex's funeral?
Big fan of our Moneyball episode.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, for more information on The Other Side of the Wind, be sure to check out our full-length episode where we'll dive a bit more into the lore. But we got some pretty good nuggets of wisdom here. Adam, we just want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I know it's kind of a random affair, and I'm not sure if you ever saw yourself regaling tales like this on the internet to some people, but we appreciate you taking the time to do so.
No, I'm glad to talk about my uncle and just kind of the impact that he made in the odd people that he worked with. So, pleasure talking about him.
Very happy that you did. I'm curious. So one last question, Adam, because you said you haven't seen The Other Side of the Wind, but did you watch the documentary, or are you curious about the documentary?
So, in talking with my cousin about the movie, as we were kind of talking about, it doesn't sound like the type of movie that I would really enjoy because although Orson was involved with it, it also had a lot of my uncle's touches to it. And it was just, it doesn't seem like the type of film I'd ever really want to watch. I would be far more interested in the business side of how they got the financing together to make the Shah of Iran's brother whole and be able to get the film edited to a proper format.
Yeah, I think that it's called They'll Love Me When I'm Dead. I think that's the name of the behind the scenes documentary they made. So that one might actually be something that you would enjoy. They might even mention your uncle. I honestly, I wouldn't have known at the time, but that one tells you like a lot of the backstory, and that I found really fascinating. So that's a recommendation for all of you out there too, listening.
Excellent. All right, listeners. Well, this certainly was a treat, a fun way to cap off our summer journey. So, Adam, thank you again, man. I really appreciate it.
Glad to be on.
Take care, y'all.
Bye.